Steve Denyer here. Paul Young there. Hello, Paul.
Hello. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. And
Good.
so far, you're a star pupil. You've come up with an abundance of tracks. We've got something like 15 here
Yes,
that we're going to whistle down.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming in. You're one of the huge stars of this feature, and a massive star of the 80s.
Thank you.
It seemed back in the day when I picked up Smash Hits magazine every couple of weeks, you were on the front cover.
Yeah, I know. I've done a lot of photo shoots. Some of them questionable.
Oh, really?
But they were back then. Just because you don't have the experience of knowing when you look good and when you don't.
And you know what? Talking about looking good, you look amazing. Like, you haven't aged at all.
Really?
You look
that's
incredible.
good.
What's the secret?
A little bit of what you fancy does you good.
Oh, there we are.
I never, I don't do anything to excess, but I like all the nice things in life, you know.
Brilliant. Oh, well, that's good to hear. Let's start with track number 1 then on your list, on my 80s playlist this week. You're going for huge one, and who can forget the video to this? Robert Palmer, Addicted to Love.
Yeah, I'm managed by Robert's manager. My manager, David Harper, was he started off as Robert's roadie, and then Robert had a disagreement with the manager. He wasn't happy with the management, and he just said to David, "Well, you know more about it than anybody else. You've been on the road non-stop, blah 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 blah." And then he looked after him right up until the day he died, and I bumped into David on quite a few occasions. In the 80s, you know, David and Robert.
What was he like?
He was great. He's always very intense about his music. He would love a conversation about music, and he would get right focused in on it. You know, if you look at his career and the musical changes that he made, in fact, there's a similarity between him and me. Both solo stars came out of. He'd been in 2 or 3 bands. Last one being Vinegar Joe, and then when he went solo, he started off like doing pure funk for Sneaking Sally Through the Alley, and then morphed through to playing with Pere Ubu, which was out and out French rock and roll, you know.
What do you think he would think of, a whole generation just knowing this song because plenty of people just know this song, this video.
Probably be a bit frustrated by it because I think when you're an artist, every song is your baby, you know, and you have lots of them. So you don't like to single anyone out, you know. Yes, of course, it was massive, and it got him a house in Switzerland. I'm sure he's very happy about that, you know, or was, sadly. Yeah, it's done very good for him.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
Your next pick is one of my favourite bands, and no one has requested these guys yet. Squishy Polisi.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm quite. I'm very up for making sure people don't forget the great ones. And sometimes because of ease, I think, and a lot of the way people listen to radio now, it's a lot of background music, you know, so they like hearing the same songs again. So it's already there in the back of their brain. But I like to give people a little poke every now and again and go, oh, yes, I do know this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, who was it, you know?
Yeah.
And,
when you talk about those songs that have stood the test of time, your songs amazingly have. I mean, I think we play most of them here on Virgin Radio 80s Plus, and they still sound. You know how some songs sound dated and kind of faded and so on, but yours don't. How comes?
I think the perfect case point is Every Time You Go Away, where we used a mixture of synth sounds, but a lot of real instruments, and then it doesn't date it so much, and that's. You wouldn't call it a trick, but you know, and I kind of chose this one as well because I thought of him or them, and I put them on random, and up came The Sweetest Girl, which and when I hadn't heard it for nearly 30 years, when I played it, I thought I remember when I was getting ready for my solo career, arranging a song that I'd written to sound a little bit like The Sweetest Girl.
Really?
Yeah, and but. The Word Girl is also another one that you wouldn't think of first. You tend to go for Absolute or Would-Be, Spray Like Aretha Franklin. But this is a forgotten gem.
Brilliant. This next track, the Icicle Works, you've actually introduced me. I didn't know this track. Please tell me more. This is kind of early 80s, isn't it?
Yeah. This one, just like Squishy Polisi, they were happening at the time that I got my solo deal. And I was soaking up all this new music that was coming up because I'd been in a retro soul band. And there was a comment when we were looking for the producers that used to produce Madness, Clive Langer and Alan Winstanley. They weren't really interested because they said it's too retro. And I said, I listen to loads of modern music. He said, but it doesn't come out in what the Q-Tips are, you know. I thought, right, I'll put a stop to that then, you know. And so, as I said, Scritti Politti, I tried to get a little bit of that kind of arrangement, very unusual arrangements.
Just in case people didn't know, you were in quite a few bands, weren't you, before the solo career? How many?
Oh, it was only 2. I was in the Q-Tips, well, apart from local bands.
Yes.
I was playing bass then, I wasn't doing the vocals. And I was in street band that did Toast.
Yeah. What made you jump into the solo career then from the bands? What made you go solo?
Because you always get that thing where you start to form ideas in your mind, and that thing about, so when that was said about the Q-Tips, I thought we need to get some more modern influence in. So I started writing songs with Ian Cooley, the keyboard player, and I tried to bring some more modern influence in, and the rest of them didn't like them. and they were bringing songs in, and I thought, oh no, it's too retro. I think we need to be something else. So we were kind of going 2 different ways.
Right.
And it's a shame, but it happens.
And tell me why you want this particular song. Why have you picked
want this one?
one?
Because it was one of those songs that it drew me in, because once again, it was coming out of punk at the time, so it's got that edge to it. But when the chorus comes in, the chorus is standalone beautiful.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, okay, great stuff. Your next track is Level 42, and we'll talk about them in a moment. The Sun Goes Down is a song that you've picked.
Yeah.
Can I first ask a question that I can't forget and I'm dying to ask? Take me back to Live Aid, will you? You were there. Okay. You were there on that day. Tell me more.
I was there on that day, and I'm actually doing an upcoming tour. It's a talking tour with a book. So I'm actually going through my chronological musical timeline.
Right.
And it's quite interesting. I just found out that I knew I was in America, and they said, we're going to put Live Aid on, can you play? And I said, of course I can. Yeah, you know, I'll make sure that we've got space in the tour. And then I was thinking, we've got to fly all that way back to UK, and then straight after that, because we were taking a break for Live Aid, I thought I'll extend it a bit and have a few days off in the middle of this big world tour. So I said, can't I play in Philadelphia instead, so I don't have to go all the way? And they went, no, you can't do that, because we've got all the American artists on that stage, it's full, and you were booked for London, you know. So my manager did a little deal with Harvey, which was clever actually, because every time we go away, it was just beginning to get played in America. And he said, all right, then we will be on the London stage as long as we get the slot where America tunes in. And that's what he got me.
Really? So what time was that? Take me back to. Do you remember?
Oh, it was around about 4 o'clock, I think. And I remember Bob said, I'm going to come on in the middle of your show and say, hello, America.
Oh, how amazing.
And so he did that. And up until he actually said it, I hadn't thought anything about it. And then he went, hello, America, or whatever it was he said. And I stood there and went, oh my God, this isn't just Wembley anymore.
Yeah,
you know, it's just...
that was a really good plan then. So the Americans saw part of your set.
Yeah, that's right. I was first on from.
Can you take me back to what the atmosphere was like backstage? And you know, were you there when Freddie Mercury did his thing with Queen? What did you enjoy from that day? Tell me everything.
Well, the sad thing is when you're backstage, there's a lot you miss.
Yeah.
You know, so I didn't get to see Queen. Because. And as I remember again, because of this book thing, they were going in, and they were caravans, nothing more than caravans. There wasn't enough dressing rooms backstage. And so I had to get out the caravan so Queen could get in it, you know, which seems so funny now. But I got stuck with a couple of people with microphones asking me questions or stuff like that. And all of a sudden, my manager came around the corner. Where have you been? They're waiting to go in and get changed. Oh dear, you know. And so I just rushed in there because everyone else was in and out.
Yeah.
And I was the last one, so I just got changed. And Brian was an absolute gentleman about it, of course.
Yeah.
And but then you're stuck backstage because you got interviews, things. You know.
It's not as glam as you know. There's not massive beer up. You know.
Watched a couple of things from the side of the stage.
Yeah.
But, it was a wonderful experience.
Great stuff.
Being out there in front of all those people and all the feeling of goodwill was incredible.
Mm-hmm. And tell me why Level 42, The Sun Goes Down. Why'd you pick this?
I love Level 42. I think they wrote... It's funny because they started off like a jazz funk band, and Mark ended up writing, or they ended up writing some great songs, really good pop songs. What I like about this one though is, I remember it was much funkier than some of their others, and it's because they were working with Maurice White, who was the bass player from Earth, Wind and Fire, and I think that made a marked difference to
had an influence
how Mark played in the studio. You know?
Yeah, brilliant. Hue and Cry, Labour of Love. This is an interesting, a couple of brothers, weren't they?
Yeah.
Tell me more. Why have you picked this, Labour of Love?
I'll tell you why. The only reason I picked it is because I've done a few dates with them recently.
I heard. How was that?
And no, you're talking about the October tour. That was the rug that was pulled out from under our feet.
Oh, okay.
And it didn't happen.
Oh, right.
But I'd done a tour a couple of years ago with them, and then when I was talking to my girlfriend, and she was saying, "Oh, I know that. Who are they?" And I played it in the car for her, and then I thought, I've forgotten what a great track this is, So I thought I'd put it in.
Yeah. And do you know them?
Not necessarily well. I mean, they live up in Scotland, but we had a bit of beer time occasionally on the road. We had a day off in Manchester, so we found a pub that was close by after the gig, and we went there. It was nice.
I must ask you, we spoke early on this week about Live Aid, but of course there's so much more. Do you ever pinch yourself to think, yes, I was at Live Aid, yes, you did Band Aid, didn't you? And then you were at the Freddie Mercury tribute concert in 1992. The Nelson Mandela. That all happened, and you were there. Those moments that were down in history.
Yeah, I know. I think it's only recently that I've started to appreciate the 80s for what they really were. When I was in the middle of it. I mean, if you ask me what my favourites are, they would be stuff from the 70s, because I was a teenager in the 70s, and music means more to you when you're a teenager than it will do at any point in your life.
Of course.
So, but I look at the 80s now and go, wow, it was just such a landmark decade, because fashion had exploded, music was exploding because of technology. So there was so much more at your fingertips if you were a musician, and you'd got all the artists like Robert Palmer from the 60s and the 70s, and still making great music in the 80s. And Genesis was still coming through.
Well, you toured with Genesis as well. This is another thing.
Yeah.
I mean, what was that like?
That was great, and we got on well. And then, of course, when we did that, there was another Prince's Trust that year, which Phil had agreed to appear on Sold Eye. So he said, hey, we're on the road, why don't let's rehearse something together? And we did a little medley of Four Tops.
Oh,
so
amazing.
I'm a massive Levi Stubbs fan. He was one of my favourite singers of all time. And so it was a great bit of fun to do that with Phil.
Brilliant stuff. We're going to go into Duran Duran next, Planet Earth. Credible band. What a band. What a song. Why'd you pick? It must be quite hard to pick a Duran Duran song when you're trying to do this.
I chose Planet Earth because there are songs that I probably like better. Ordinary World's fantastic, and Girls on Film's good. There's a load of them. Save a Prayer, that's great. They've done some really, really good ones. But I don't know what it was about. But then this one popped into my head, and I thought, oh my God, I remember it like it was yesterday. Hear it once again. I think it's near the beginning of the 80s.
Yeah.
And all this, once again, was influencing what my album was going to be.
Yeah, as you were breaking through into being a solo artist.
Because I'd heard them, and I thought, that's an interesting record, interesting arrangement. And I always thought that, actually, of Duran Duran. I thought they were, you could tell they had a big Bowie influence. But they were the kind of band that a bit like a kind of you wouldn't say a college band. So they thought of it in more artistic terms than I do. I tend to go a lot on feel, because I was brought up on American R&B. So they approach music from a different way to me. Yeah. So therefore I'm interested in that, because I don't think like that. Yeah. And I want to hear it and see what I can pick up.
I've got another 80s question I'm going to chuck at you. Okay. We ran, just before Christmas, a Band Aid day, a special on Band Aid. Yeah. We spoke to some of the artists that were there and got some of the gossip. What do you remember about that day?
I remember it was weird, because I was thinking I'd only had one record out when I went on there, and then when I looked it up chronologically, I'd got 2 singles out, so it would be from the second album. I thought, it must have been out then, but it wasn't, Because back then, you used to release singles as kind of tasters.
Right.
And you'd hold the album back. So I remember going in there and still relatively feeling like the new boy.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit
How intimidating
disconcerting.
was that? I mean, who do you remember seeing in that studio? Because everyone piled in, didn't they?
Yeah, it was to see everybody at once. But luckily, I got there very early in the morning. I think everybody had to be there early in the morning.
Yeah.
To be honest. I think Bob made us, because he never knew when he'd want to film something or whatever, or what the crew might want,
Give us some backstage gossip. Give me a story that you remember from that day.
I think everything's been told. Status Quo were misbehaving, but we all know that. Who was really nice? I struck up with John Taylor, and we used to bump into each other then for a few years after that as well. When he was living in New York, I'd look him up, and we'd go out to dinner, stuff like that. Who else was nice? Well, they were all nice. George was great. George Michael was great. And I was goofing around with Bananarama. It was great to meet Cool and the gang. People forget they were actually there.
Yeah, of course.
They just said, "Hey, we're in town. We'd love to be a part of it." So they just came in and sang on the crowd vocals, and it was great to meet. They were possibly the only American band that got on it.
Great stuff. Okay, next we're going to go with Prince, When Doves Cry.
Yeah.
Amazing record. Tell me why you've picked this.
Once again, Prince was coming out. I was still in the Q-Tips, I think, when I first heard Prince. And I just thought, wow, who is this guy? It's a bit like people did with Bruce Springsteen. People thought, who is this? I want to know what's going on. And I read a reviewer when he played the Bottom Line in New York, and they said, he is the second coming. And I thought, oh my God, I've got to hear this. So then I heard I Want to Be Your Lover and a couple of other things. And I thought he was the artist of the 80s. I think he was the Ray Charles of the 80s, whatever you want to call it, like a bit of a musical genius.
Because he put the song together, and like this song, he played every instrument on this track.
And I chose it because there's very few records where there's not a bass on it. And there's no bass on this record. Yeah. That's very, very unusual. I mean, I love bass, but I just thought, okay, you listen to the record, and the weird thing is you don't really miss it. And that's why I chose this one.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. Did you meet him? Did you meet Prince? Got to ask you that.
No,
you didn't.
We were both in Tramp at the same time.
Right.
He in one room and me in another.
Oh, okay. So
like he was in the nightclub itself, and I was on a table in the restaurant area with some friends. And I thought, do I want to go and say hello? I thought, no, I know he's pretty shy. I'm not going to go and force myself upon him, So
yeah.
I didn't. I wish I had, really.
Next track is Mr. Broken Wings. This is like pivotal kind of mid-80s sound, isn't it?
It is.
And you were huge here. You your solo career had kicked in. Yeah. Tell me why you've picked this. Why this song?
I picked this one because I actually was, when I had to try and come up with these songs, I was driving 6 hours to a gig from Liverpool to almost the south coast. So I chose some that were particularly my choices, like Squishy Pility and things like this. And then this one came on the radio because I was listening to 70s radio. Absolute 70s, I believe.
We'll edit that out, Jack.
We'll get a cup of coffee now. And this one came on, and I thought, that is a really good record. And I guess I'd heard it so much that I'd written it off. And then when you don't hear something for a while, and you hear it again, you go, oh, that was so much better than I thought it was. So I thought, well, let's play it again then.
Okay, great. I must ask you, recently, on a different tangent, I saw a brilliant documentary on the iPlayer called Freddie Mercury, The Final Chapter, which maps out his final years before he passed away, but also the build-up to the Freddie Mercury tribute concert in 1992, which you were very, very much part of. You were in the documentary. What do you remember about that? Was it an emotional day? You did feel for them, didn't you? Because
you couldn't help.
They were shell-shocked,
absolutely
weren't they?
Shell-shocked. Well, they knew it was coming.
Did you know Freddie? Did you know Freddie? I've got to ask you.
No, that was my big chance. Was when I was hoping he was going to be outside the caravan when I came out, and he wasn't. He was off schmoozing somewhere, and the rest were there with their bags on the floor, and so I missed him that time. Although, just recently I found, when I was looking for photos, that I ran a charity for a good few years with my then manager, Jed, and it was not Dreams for Children, it was something like that. And the angle that it had was, it was more for the families, because they forget, although the child, if that's ill with cancer or whatever, he's going through a terrible time, so are the family, and they don't get to be a family. So we arranged this thing where the money was spent, where if they'd had a big operation and things like that, they could go somewhere and be with their family, and just their family, So we'd get a nice place in Switzerland we went to, where they could like camp and things like that. Oh,
amazing.
And loads of people came, one of whom was Freddie, and I got a photo of them with two of the kids, which was really nice. So I must have met him briefly that day.
Yeah.
But once again, I think with Freddie, if he's there doing something like that, he'll flit around, he'll do his job, and he'll go,
And the whole point of the Freddie Mercury tribute concert is you had huge stars singing Queen songs, didn't you?
Yes.
What were you invited to sing that day?
This is it. I was once again on tour in America, and my manager Jed had told me about the concert, and he said, you need to pick a song. I went, okay. All right. Can't think of one right now that I'd like to do, but I'll get back to you. And then I got lost in the touring thing again. And then he called me up. He said, you thought of one yet? I went, oh, no, I haven't. Okay, just give me a couple of days. Then he called me up and went, right, you're down to 3. I went, oh, no. Okay, what 3? And out of the 3 was Radio Gaga, Who Wants to Live Forever? Something else. And I went, Radio Gaga. I would go with that one. Yeah. Because I don't want a ballad. Yeah. I've had hit ballads, fed up with ballads.
That must have been pressure doing that song.
It was. I mean, I knew it was Roger's song, really, and I thought maybe I should have chosen a Freddie one. I thought no, but I like it, and I kind of remembered that in the video there's that bit where everyone goes, "Oh, we hear Radio Gaga."
Everyone remembers that from Live Aid, that song, and the hands motion and stuff.
Yes, exactly. Well, but I've got that in my head, of course, but I hadn't really thought about that either. A bit like the Bob entrance on Live Aid. So I hadn't really thought about it until it happened. Yeah. And then you see it, a whole sea of people.
Like 90,000 people doing it.
I almost forgot my words, Yeah. Yeah, it was amazing.
Was it an emotional day?
Yeah, it was. I think so. I mean, it was in rehearsal as well, but everybody was applying themselves to the job, chatting amongst themselves. But the conversations were quite casual and nice, because it was a somber moment, really.
Yes.
But we all had work to do.
They reckon that everybody who was there that day and that show being shown live around the world just really spurned on, like awareness about AIDS.
Yes.
And, the stigma attached and stuff, and raised loads of money. It just kind of moved us on a step.
Definitely did, yeah. Yeah, because now people have a much better understanding of it. And thank God, with time that's passed and the incredible doctors and scientists and everything, it's more controllable,
Brilliant stuff. Thank you for answering that. 2 more songs then. We're doing disco now with The Whispers.
Yes.
What a great song.
Well, here's the thing. The 80s, I thought 70s disco was great, but really, 80s disco, I think just about pips it at the post.
Why?
I mean, and
is it because it had matured by that stage?
It had matured, but once again, you'd got all this extra technology to hand, and you got bass synthesizer.
Yeah.
Oh, they sound great. I never thought anything could sound better than a bass guitar, but when you get a bass synth, it sounds amazing, When you think of songs like She's a Bad Mama Jamma by Carl Carlton, and that's all synth bass, but it just grooves like crazy. So you've got all that other stuff that you could use as well as the funk from the 70s.
Yeah.
And I think there was some of the best club records ever made. And in fact, I saw an advert the other day for a perfume, and they're still using You Make Me Feel Mighty Real by Sylvester, because you can't escape the fact that 80s music was great.
Yeah.
Not just the pop, but the club music.
And lots of those disco
everything.
songs, like I was saying about your music earlier on in the week, these have stood the test of time as well, haven't they? They still sound
absolutely,
like retro, futuristic.
You can't help but move to them.
No, they're great. Great pick. Now, I was just wondering, you can have the, this is a live My 80s playlist moment, though. Now, you can have Odyssey, or you can pick one of these that we didn't use.
Let's go for Kid Creole.
Okay.
And Stool Pigeon, because Kid Creole, there was a 3-year period where he owned the summers. You know?
Yes.
And all across Europe, and his shows were massive.
Yeah.
You know, he just went bang and he exploded. I just remember that melting pot of calypso and reggae and Cuban music and all this sort of stuff, and I love listening to loads of different types of music. In fact, I'm exploring South America now all the time, because once I got into Mexican music, which I did, and started a Tex-Mex band, then I just carried on south. It was like a musical journey, and I'm down there playing stuff from Argentina now, Brazil, all that sort of stuff.
Amazing. You enjoy doing that, do you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. And so really, Kid Creole opened that up for me, because it was early days at that point, you know. And of course the Coconuts, the whole show. It's just he's I don't know.
It's flamboyant, isn't it?
Yeah, he puts on theatre.
Yeah,
it's
you
fantastic.
can tell, can't you?
Yeah.
What's next for you, for Paul Young, then? What's going on at the moment? Because you've done like I've seen you on TV loads.
Yes.
In the last couple of years, is that something you're really interested in doing, breaking through into kind of mainstream shows and?
No, not necessarily. I don't trust myself now. I'm getting older. My memory's awful. I might say the wrong thing. You know, it really worries me now, because you might just trip up and say something, and then you're part of cancel culture.
Yes, of course.
You know, I don't want that to happen.
What about the music, though?
I'm not smart enough and fast enough anymore to be able to think, no, I won't make that mistake. You know, so let's not just do it.
Yes, just in case.
But I've been on a lot of chat shows because, one, the October tour that didn't happen, but now, two, we announced this talking tour next year that comes with the book, and it's selling very, very well.
Brilliant. When does that start, by the way? When
starts next March, and it's probably going to be the only book I'll ever write. I don't want autobiographies. Don't want people knowing my business anymore. I did all that in the 80s because I had to get started.
Yeah.
I certainly don't like the intrusion now. So it's like a musical life, what I was listening to when I was a kid, and how I was lucky enough, I was playing Rufus when I was a kid, and I ended up singing with Chaka Khan in the 90s. You know, I was listening to Pink Floyd. I got David Gilmour to play the guitar on my album. Stevie Wonder, he played harmonica on a track of mine. I've met and worked with all my heroes, you know, that I was playing when I was young.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
Incredible stuff. Can we see you live in the next year as well?
Well, I do a little acoustic part in these shows, but it's mostly chat, interviews, question and answer. That sort of, there's an album release as well.
Okay.
So it's all called Behind the Lens. That was going to be the album title. So then when I discussed the tour, he said that's a perfect name for the tour. So I've been sat on my album for 6 months now. And it's all material that's not been heard before.
Great stuff. So the two come together.
Yeah.
One final question. Got to ask you this: the Nelson Mandela Show. Then tell me something about that, because that was, I remember as a teen watching that. You were in it on it. What memories do you have?
I remember I was working on some songs for what was going to be my 4th album, and then the request came in, and I thought, in all of the songs I'd ever done, there was nothing. I don't do very. Politics don't really come into the songs that I've done, so I thought I got nothing of my own really that would fit in. But I was a fan of "Don't Dream It's Over" by Crowded House, and I remember that little couplet that said, "And in the paper today, tales of war and of waste, but you turn right over to the TV page," you know. And I thought, that's a nice little pointed comment, you know.
Yeah.
And as people know me for doing arrangements of cover songs, I thought I'd like to do that.
And it was a big moment of that day, wasn't it, that cover?
Yes, it was. Yeah. And
you enjoyed it?
I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Did you meet the great man? I've got to ask you that.
No, I'm pretty sure that the one we did, he wasn't out at that point, was he? Or was he? No.
I think he was just released, and it was.
Yeah.
I may have.
So
that
I don't
wrong.
think he was there.
Okay.
The one I did, but I worked with Midge's band, and Midge has been a friend over the years. Although you come and go, I seem to meet and work with Midge a lot. Band-Aid included.
Yeah, of course. Well, listen, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for spending time coming in to see us again. Would you do it again? We should have you in again.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe give you your own show where you can play. It'd be great.
Definitely.
Paul Young.
Give me club night.
Well, we're up for it. Paul Young, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.